I sure can. I'm Brian Guimond. I actually started my career in the Federal Supermax, working at the Federal Supermax as a correctional officer. I went to MDC Brooklyn as a lieutenant. From there, I went to USP Big Sandy in Kentucky as a lieutenant. Then I went back to the Supermax as a lieutenant. And then I went out as a captain to a female institution in Dublin, California. Then back to Colorado and Inglewood as a captain for there. And then I was a training specialist before I retired.
Yeah, that's a whole list right there, man.
Yeah.
You said you had a book too. You
Yes.
you have so much going on.
I do. It's
I
called
can't wait to
25
get
to
in this.
Life. Yep, 25 to Life. It's how federal prison changed my life forever because I did 25 years in and it's affecting me my entire life. Yeah, I saw the other side. I saw guys that were just trying to do the right thing. I worked with a lot of really good people. Unfortunately, there's a few that don't work well, but don't judge the many by the mistakes of a few, please. We're not all bad people, but I had some great men that shaped my life and women that shaped my life in police officer ranks that made me say, this is what I want to do. This is me. I can help people, not just, I'm being, like you have inmates and stuff like that. I'm trying to help everybody. So I wasn't trying to just help my fellow officers and stuff. I was trying to help inmates as well by doing the right thing.
Yeah. So, how old were you when you officially got hired to work in the prisons?
24.
And what is the hiring process like? What do you have to go through?
Well, it's you go to USA Jobs and you just basically fill out the information. And because I was a reserve police officer for 4 years, I didn't need a bachelor's degree, which is what you usually need to start, believe it or not. And so I
Yeah.
qualified, so I was able to start uh, at the ADX, which I was one of the first officers to start the ADX with no experience at all.
So the first prison that you started out in, what was the reputation of it?
Oh, it was the worst of the worst. It's called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. It's the federal supermax prison. And basically, when my first day there, I was doing my pre-employment physical, and they had an inmate come in with his brains bleeding out of his head. And I was like, whoa, and the captain comes around the corner and he goes, hey, are you here for a job? I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am. Like, what's going on? He goes, if that phone rings, you answer it. So I'm like, okay. It comes to find out it was a gang thing. Uh, and they were basically taking that guy out, so they had no weapons. So they actually had to beat him to death with their hands and feet.
Yeah. It gets crazy. I try to tell people you don't want to join a gang. You don't want to do it. You don't want to
Mm.
do it.
It's unfortunate, because it's blood in, blood out. And being at the ADX, that's where all the founders, because I'm an old guy, all the founders from all the gangs were there. Like, Louis Felipe, he founded the Latin Kings in the New York. You got OG Mac, you got Larry Hoover, Black Gangster Disciples. You got and one, for instance, like Matulu Shakur, Tupac's stepdad. I had him, but you have all these leaders of all these gangs, so you kind of learn with like these guys are like celebrities and the
Yeah.
charisma they have. But the thing is it's a brutal business. If you're in the gang, you have to do what the gang says. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they say you got to do this, you better do this. So it's not fun.
Yeah. Trust me, I know. Yeah, I try to tell people all the time. That's what it's all about. You're doing what somebody else tells you to do, and if you don't do it, you're gonna get dealt with. You know.
Absolutely.
What
And like you have said in
what's
some
up?
of your other podcasts that, your word is the only thing you have. If
Yeah.
and that's the same with me as a CO or a lieutenant or a captain. If I'm going to tell you something, I'm going to be honest and I'm not going to lie. I never lie because that once you lose your integrity with inmates, it's done because they're never going to trust you again either.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right about that. Absolutely. What
Mhm.
surprised you most about the inmates?
That they're regular people. They're men. I treated them like men, and I would tell them that. I said, "I'm going to treat you like a man as long as you act like one." And they that I it was very rare I would get disrespected. If I got disrespected, it's just because they were trying to get somewhere. Because at the ADX, you got locked down 23 hours out of the day. So the only kind of recreation you get is when you take on the team. So being a CO, I recognize some of these guys. They're like, "Hey man, it ain't personal. Just can you do the team? I want to fight somebody. Come on, man. Help me out." So I'm like, all right, it's that time, huh? I said, let's do it. So I would just tell the lieutenant, oh yeah, he's not listening to the rules and regulations. The institution wants to take on the team. He's not going to submit to restraint. So we do all we things we have to do to make sure we're doing the right thing. And then, I was usually him. I was the number one. So they knew I was coming in first, and they liked it when I did it because it was straight up. It was, let's do this. I'd get that hit on. I'd get him down. I'd get him subdued or whatever it is, with our Ninja Turtle suits on. And as soon as
Yeah.
I got him down and secured, it was done. We're done. Like there's no extra shots on my watch. That's not something I ever did. But then the inmates, we get done. We'll 4-point them or put them in ambulatory restraints. And then after the cameras are off, I'll go into the room with them and I'll be like, hey, man, that was a good job, man. Damn, you got me pretty good. He's like, you did too, Guimond. Jesus. So it was always a mutual
Yeah.
respect thing.
As long as you keep it real with inmates, I mean, they give you respect if you name
Yeah.
some of those famous some of the famous inmates that you actually get to talk to them?
Oh, every day, every single day. And unfortunately, I had to strip them out every day. So
Yeah.
it's something ingrained in my life. So I've seen them all very personally, unfortunately. But small talk, and they're actually just regular people, man. And that's what people don't understand. They think inmates just kill people all the time, and they're horrible humans, and they're not. They're humans. They're men, women, just like us, fathers, sons. They just made a mistake and they got caught, and I wasn't there to punish anybody. I was there to give them what they got coming, nothing more, nothing less, nothing less, and firm, fair, and consistent. That's how I rolled.
Yeah. Um, were there any other famous inmates at any of the other places that you worked?
We had so many, especially at the ADX, but the other institutions, they weren't so much famous but infamous. Just guys like Mexican Mafia. They had what's called Black Hand. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you're probably familiar with it. But to this day, if I see somebody at the pool and they got a black hand tattooed on their chest,
Oh
I
yeah.
leave that man alone. Or hey, how you doing
Yeah.
today? You need anything? Because in
Yeah.
Big Sandy we had two of them. They ran the Mexican Mafia there, and I would purposely call them in my office as a lieutenant and talk to them and be like, "Hey, listen, I know you're going to run a hustle. I'm going to try to get you at your hustle, but just know that if my officers do something wrong, you let me know. Don't take it out on them. If they're acting wrong, coming out their face for any reason, you let me know and I'll correct it." And I had some instances where they're like, "Hey, that officer, go ahead and look at the camera. You'll see what he was doing. And if he does it again, he's done." So I talk to that officer and be like, "Hey, dude, what are you doing?" I'm like, "You see this? They're posting up. Well, they're waiting on the word to kill you, just so you know." And the officer's like, "Oh my God, really?" I'm like, "Yeah, so act right. You don't get extra shots in when you cuff somebody. That's not right." And so from that moment on, he stopped. And the black hand is like, "I appreciate it." I said, "Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate you not doing something, because at the end of the day, I need to keep my officers safe too." And I did everything I could to keep them safe and let the inmate know, of course, that I'm not easy. I'm going to do rules. I'm going to follow rules. And I'm not that guy. And you want us to do our job. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Inmates, 97% of inmates want you to find shanks. The 3% don't, because that's one less shank that's going to be in them. That's what people don't
Yeah.
understand.
That's true. I remember when I was in prison, everybody had one. Everybody. If you didn't have one, you didn't want to get caught without it. Because that could be
Right.
your life. I've seen
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah.
people die in there. I can only imagine how many people like all the death you've seen at prison.
Uh, yeah, it's too much. It's too much, and that's why everybody needs help. Like you guys go through the same thing. You've been through so much yourself, crime, and it's just you get help. You do need help. All
Yeah.
alpha males like me. I was, strongman competition winner. I was doing all this, working the baddest joints. I was the alpha male. Yeah. No, no, you need help, because when it affects your family, it affects your family, and you can't have it affect your family. You got to go talk to somebody because you've seen it too, man. People forget
Yeah,
inmates are humans too, and you can recidivate, and you can do better, and you can make a difference in the world and turn your life around, like it seems like you're definitely doing. So, hats off to you, my
yeah,
friend.
you definitely can. Thank you. You definitely can. What are some of the craziest things you've seen while working?
Uh, geez. One of the worst things I've seen is I went by an inmate's cell, and he was by himself, and he was looking at me, and I go, "What are you doing?" And I looked closer, and he was holding his penis that he cut off, but it was still
What?
attached by his urethra. So what he did was he took a chicken bone and he shoved it through around, raked it across the concrete in the cell, and was standing there with it, looking at me. And I'm like,
What the hell?
wow. So needless to say, he was in the cell by himself, but we get the medical crew coming. They come in, we get him under control, we get him out to the hospital, and I was luckily enough, I got to watch him sew it back on. You know, but I told him after, I said,
That's
dude, what are you
crazy.
doing? That's the only thing that gives you pleasure in prison. Why would you mess with that? And he's like, because he was on psych meds, and at the ADX, the control unit, you're not allowed to take psych meds. It's like literally an act of Congress to get you out of control unit to get you on your psych meds. So I'm a firm believer in give them their psych meds because I've seen them without it.
Yeah, it's crazy nowadays. Back in the days they used to have mental hospitals. I don't know if they still do, but I know they send a lot of people that are supposed to go there to prison.
Hmm.
You got a
Yeah,
lot of those people.
yeah, and
You
that's
got a lot
that's
of
the thing
people.
is,
They play with feces and stuff. I know you had an encounter with that. You had to have.
oh, well, yeah, that's in my book, several pages, because unfortunately I have that talent where I could shut off my nasal cavity and I could not smell things. So I didn't vomit or puke. I was the guy to go in to get him and wrestle him in his feces. So yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, I try to tell people about that. Inmates would use that as like biological weapon. They'll throw it on
Yeah.
COs. They'll throw it on inmates. Their own
Oh
feces.
yeah.
Like
Yep. Yep.
and
Yep.
you can't imagine the. You can probably picture it in your head, but unless you're
Mhm.
really there, you can't picture this stuff. Imagine somebody making a whole bunch of bottles of this stuff, going out into the rec room and just unloading all of it. The smell
Yeah.
is horrible.
Yeah. And that's the thing is we had him where he would smear it all over his cell and all over himself, and all you could see is the whites of his eyes. And he's like, "Let's do this." I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm not getting paid enough," But you still have to do it, and you got to go in because I mean the guy's getting ready to kill himself as well, so he's getting ready to hang himself. So you got to go in, you got to respond because you don't want him to die on you. So you have to go in, wrestle him, get him under control. And I mean, some of these guys, I had him 4 pointed for 14 days. That means he's got his arms stretched out and his legs stretched out, and he's laying there for 14 days. And he's like, the whole time we come in, F you, F you, F you. And it's like, man, I just come on, man, what are you doing? I was like, I'm impressed, first off, but I'm like, stop doing what you're doing because it's counterproductive and it's disgusting.
Yeah, that's crazy. Some people just they
Yeah.
lose it, man. They lose it. They
Well,
might have
unfortunately,
nobody.
yeah.
They might not have
Yeah.
any family or nothing. Nobody there for them. They might have people that passed away. You never know what somebody's going through, especially in prison.
You said it exactly. You never know what anybody's going through. That's why anytime I'd go up to somebody that's going off, I would always talk to them first. And because got to know my inmates, and I never called somebody an inmate. I always called him by his name, or if I didn't know, I'm like, "Hey, you, come here." And I'm like, "Hey, what's your name?" Because I never was one to do that because it's respect first. And I used to listen to the phone calls because you had to. And I kind of know personally what they were going through. So when somebody's like, "Hey, this inmate's acting this way," I said, "Well, did you know the story behind it? His mother just died. Like, like, come on, let him vent. And I was always that guy that would make sure they got what they got coming, knew them, talked to them, and then I was always a good de-escalator, because the last thing I ever wanted to do was do a use of force for the wrong reasons, particularly. Like I said, some of the guys were just, mountains of muscle that just wanted to kind of expel some energy. So I would always help them out with that aspect. And I thought I was pretty good too. But in their defense, that after I hit my first initial hit, I had four buddies coming behind me, so they were tough. They were tough. And you think of the people try to say, well, what did inmates look like? And I said, well, think of the scariest person on the street that you've ever seen, and think of all them together. Because you have
Yeah,
to have the penitentiary stare too. First time I went into the penitentiary, I decided it may just kind of stare me down. So I was like, we okay? Because if you show weakness, you're in trouble. So I was just like,
yeah,
luckily I had one of the DC blacks, we called them. That's when they emptied out all the prisons in Washington DC, and they brought them all in the federal system. We had 500 of them at that big sandy yard. And at the ADX, I had this inmate Tatum. Oh my God, he was a mountain of a man. I went to responded to a call where he was just beating the living heck out of a dude in the unit to within an inch of his life, right? So I'm on the yard at Big Sandy, and all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, Guimond!" And I turn around, and I'm looking up because the dude's huge, and I'm like, "Oh my God, Tatum, what are you doing?" He goes, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm a new lieutenant, man." And he goes, "Don't tell him how it was in the ADX, because we want to make sure everybody knows how hard it is in there." I said, "Well, it was hard in there." I said, "But you were just by yourself, but you did a good job on that one guy." He goes, "Oh, you remember that?" I said, "Yeah, I remember that." But luckily he was high up in the DC. So if I had a problem with one of his guys, he held the keys, to the car, as they say. If I had a problem, I'd go to him and be like, "Hey, I'm having kind of a problem with one of your guys." He's like, "I got you." So I'm like, "Thank you."
yeah. You said you talked a little bit about having to listen to inmates calls. I don't know how much you could talk about on stuff like that, but are you
Mhm.
required to like listen to a certain amount of inmate calls? Do they
Oh
make
yeah.
you?
Yes, absolutely. You have to do a certain percentage by policy to listen. And at the ADX, unfortunately, we had to listen to all of them, which is good and bad. Because, like I said, sometimes not everybody's like me. I didn't take things. I didn't use anything against anybody ever. So I use it as a tool to get to know the inmates and to know what their struggles are. And also, it was kind of funny because a lot of them were like, "Hey, they're being really mean to us, and they took away all our books, and I need money for my books," knowing that we don't charge them for anything at the time. But I knew they were running a
They got to
hustle. You
tell
know
them
what I
something.
mean?
It's a hustle.
So I'm
Yeah,
like,
it is.
exactly. So
Inmates, they get in debts and stuff, and they gotta come up with some of the craziest lies to tell their families. They
yeah,
can't tell them, "Hey,
yes,
I owe the drug man some money." You can't
uh,
tell them that.
yeah. Like you want to talk about not being glory. Like you think of try to talk somebody out of being in prison because it's not cool. Let's talk about dry cell. They make you swallow drugs in the visiting room, and then we have to watch you and watch you poop until we find enough poop to where we find the drugs, or there's enough out of your system to where we don't have to look anymore. So that's fun.
Yeah, thank you for that, Keep. So, did you guys have body scanners?
Yes. Yep.
And
And
how, like, if the body scanners are there, how are the contraband still getting in?
well, you see, that's the problem is there's certain policies and procedures, like in the visiting room, they can go to the bathroom or they can have one kiss. So a lot of times that's what it is. And we miss stuff, because they put stuff in their cavities that we don't see in balloons, and they can sneak them out during the visit, hand them off, and then you swallow it. And, if we catch it on camera, then we'll put you on dry cell, we'll put you on a body scanner. Later in my career, we came up with the body scanners. So that was kind of neat because you could see the balloons inside. So we knew kind of when they were done, as they say, or if they
Yeah.
had the contraband to begin with. So
Did some of the older officers mentor you when you first started it?
yes, and that's the thing. What they would tell me at first is they're like, I said, "What do I do? I want to do a good job." And they said, "Well, say no." And I was like, "What do you mean?" They said, "Say no." So I'm like, "Okay, no." He goes, "Say that the rest of the day." So I'm like, "Okay." So I went to the first cell. This was at the ADX I started, and each inmate has his own cell, his own TV, his own shower. So as far as doing time, the ADX is pretty cool. But anyway, so I go to the first inmate. He goes, "Hey, can you pass this?" I'm like, "No." And he's like, yells at me. He's like, "Oh, it's like that. It's like that, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no." So I went through 64 people saying no, and they were yelling at me, you know. And I got home to the wife and I said, "Man, I don't think I like this job, man, because they keep yelling at me, you know." I'm like, Jesus, I just want to do a good job and be fair and blah blah blah, you know. And so the next day I go in, I go to the first cell. He doesn't say anything. So it's like, "What's up, CO?" I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" "I'm doing as good as I can." And I learned not to say that anymore because how do you think he's doing? He's in prison, right? So I stopped saying that. So then I just kind of go cell to cell, give them what they got coming. I didn't hear any of it because I got instant respect when I said I wasn't passing anything because there was always those guys that did. So that I wasn't one of them and I wasn't running for him because I wanted to let him know I'm going to follow the rules. I have to stay alive, and it's just fair for everybody. I'm not going to do something for you unless I'm going to do it for everybody.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. You would ask COs to pass stuff around, but it wouldn't be no contraband or nothing like that. It'd just be
Yeah.
like just regular stuff like food or something. But most of the
Yeah.
time, you had to fish it. Did you see a lot of fishing lines?
Oh God, yeah. I'm glad you said that because yeah, usually it was like a bag of chips and food and stuff. It wasn't like a shank or drugs or anything. You know,
Yeah,
but but the fishing lines were kind of neat because you could see them just they're like lines that they would go. They put a weight on it and then fish it to the next cell, and that was just so impressive. And unfortunately, you might not like me for this one, but I came up with the sandbag technique, and we put sandbags in front of the doors on each cell so they could fish. The
I-
inmates did not
oh,
like
that
that.
would.
They're like,
I
"Man,
ain't gonna lie. That would have pissed a lot of inmates off. That would.
I'm smarter than I look," but unfortunately, I'm my worst nightmare. Because they're like, That's messed up, CO." I'm like, "I'm sorry, man, but I'm just trying to keep everybody safe and keep everybody honest."
Yeah, at that point, the only way to pass stuff around would be the working man.
That's it. And like
That's
like I said, I'm sorry I have to use the ADX a lot, for that reason. But in the penitentiaries, absolutely. At Big Sandy, they had the shoe cells that were facing each other, so that was a nightmare for any lieutenant that's working that unit because when something happened, they all got involved, and unfortunately, they're not very culturally diverse at Big Sandy in Kentucky. So I was coming from Brooklyn, so I was. So the first time they mentioned something negative towards an inmate in that manner, I shut them right down. So I didn't make a lot of friends at Big Sandy at first because they knew I wasn't on that kind of time. Because I'm sorry, but that doesn't fly with me. It's not 1960s. I'm that guy. Come talk to me. And unfortunately, I had just about every inmate of any kind of color would come talk to me because they knew I was from Brooklyn and they knew I didn't play that
yeah,
game. But both the staff wasn't bad. It just they didn't know any better. So it was my mission to teach them better and to let them know that these guys aren't any different than you and I. They just got caught, and that's unfortunately your families told you things. Talk to them like men, and you'll find out. So hopefully, I made a
yeah.
difference in a lot of their lives, which they told me I did. So that's good.
That's the thing about it, man. Inmates, COs, bro, we're just people.
Yeah.
Inmates just got stuck in bad situations. I see all the
Hmm.
time. Some COs mess up too, and they end up going to prison. Then they really see how it really
Uh,
is. As long as you give somebody
well, that's
respect, you'll get respect back.
Well, that's like when I started at the ADX, and I had one of the inmates tell me, he goes, "Hey," he looks at me, he goes, "You a cowboy?" I said, "Hell no, I love the Patriots. What are you talking about?" He yells it on the range. He goes, "Hey, yo, thee ain't no cowboy." And I said to my officers, I said, "What's he talking about, cowboy?" And they go, "Shut up. We don't talk about that." I was like, What are we talking about?" Apparently, there was a group of COs from a different institution next door that used to go around and beat up inmates when they did something wrong, and they ended up doing prison time for it. And this was right at the end of that, and they had all gone away and it was over. But this one inmate was one of the inmates that was affected by it. So he was very relieved to find out I wasn't a cowboy. I said, "Yeah, yeah." And I ended up going back to that inmate and I'm like, "Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm not. You're fine. You're in good hands here. I promise."
that that that's a scary situation right there. Imagine being stuck in a cell,
Mhm.
and the people that are supposed to protect you, they're coming in there to cause you harm, you know. And I'm not
Yep.
talking about just a little hit; they're doing some damage.
Yeah, I mean they're putting their work in, and that is something. I had one officer once tell me, he goes, "Hey, Lieutenant, if that guy gives you a problem, we'll just call a fight in the cell, because they didn't like the inmate, right?" And I looked him dead in the eye. I said, "Come with me." I brought him in the ready room, and I had some very choice words, but then I said, "And from now on, nobody opens the damn door unless I call it. If I call the door, then we open the door. You guys right now don't have the authority to open the door. I'm coming. I'll be right here because I don't play that game."
Yeah. How important is respect inside of prison?
Oh, it's absolutely paramount. And disrespect, don't disrespect me. I won't disrespect you. But you got to learn, like I tell people, because in Brooklyn, a lot of the guys there, they didn't know how to do time. They were learning. And you had the old heads, we call them, right? The convicts, they know how to do time. So we had a couple of them in the units, and I'd be like, "Hey, can you talk to Young in here? Let him know kind of how to do time, that we don't do that here. And when he gets to the pen, he'll have plenty of time to prove himself then, and he'll learn not to do that." So that was always a struggle, and respect goes each way, both ways. I was always very respectful to anybody I talked to, and especially inmates' families when they came in the visiting room, because they'd always look at me like I was Shawshank Redemption, like I was going to beat
Oh
their
yeah,
loved one. And I'm like, and I'm
yeah.
smiling like I have now. And I'm just like, "Hey, everything all right?" And she's like they look at me and be like, "Why are you so friendly?" I said, "That's why not?" I said, "Well, my husband tells me that you guys are this and that." And I said, "Well, be that as it may, not everybody's quite like me." I said, "But I'm actually their boss. So I'll make sure they don't do that." Okay. And she's like, "Oh my God, thank you."
How quickly can a situation get dangerous inside of prison, especially your prison that you
Instantaneous.
worked at?
Oh my God. The one thing you learn never to say is, "Hey, is everything quiet?" Was actually when it was a nice little Saturday, and I had worked, Friday night to midnight, and then came in Saturday morning, and I'm like, "Oh, it's a nice little Saturday. I'm gonna take a walk." And we had a unit that was our worst unit, that was the furthest away from the lieutenant's office. And I'm like, "I'm gonna go check on Charlie 4, see how that's doing. And so I go up there, and I'm walking around talking to everybody, talking some crap, just having fun, and then all of a sudden I felt some hairs on the back of my head stand. I was like, "What? Something's gonna happen." And then we get this all call, fight in the chow hall, which was on the other side of the institution. So I come running around the corner. There's probably 300 to 400 inmates fighting. And I see trash barrels, I see shanks, and I'm running through it. I don't have my less lethal munitions. And then I hear a dude go into the chow hall, and he goes, "Crip, crip, crip, crip." I was doing the crip call for all the crips to come out and join the fight. And I'm like, "Lock that effing door now." And so we locked the door and kept them contained. I got my less lethal. And then my lieutenant that was acting comes running around the corner, and he goes, "I'm going to start shooting." I said, "Hold on." I said, so I'm screaming because I got a pretty good voice. And I'm like, "Everybody get the F down." Said, "Separate," because we had two separate gangs going at it. And my lieutenant yells, "We're going to shoe. You're all going to shoe." And I'm like, "Shut up." And I said, "Listen, everybody, we're separating. Get on the wall. You get on the wall. Nobody's going to shoe." I said, "But you are going back to your house, and we're locking it down." So I said, "I'm going to take a picture of every one of you involved, because we're going to have to investigate this whole situation. But right now, nobody's going to shoe." Because I had 200 cells in shoe. I had every single cell full. I had no room. I wasn't going to let somebody out with a weapon shot early, because I needed to put somebody in there for an investigation. So I just we locked it down. I put all the inmates back in their houses. Everything was quiet, and we got everything done with no more injuries. Unfortunately, we had to send a few staff out, because we got a couple staff, unfortunately, that were hit, we were stabbed and beaten up pretty good, because they were just in the line of fire, but the inmates weren't targeting them, because usually they
Yeah,
don't. But yeah, it
s-
got pretty quick. It was pretty heated.
stuff like that. How often does it happen?
At Big Sandy, it was a lot. On that magnitude, not that much. I'll tell you that I'm pretty stupid, because my officers were in the yard, and those two separate gangs posting up like something's going to happen. And they're out there by themselves. And I got my yard. We have a tower in the yard that shoots from the yard. And yes, live ammunition. I'm sorry. But they were getting ready to, they were posting up like something's going to happen. And I got two of my officers in there. So of course I go out, I go walking out and I look up at the tower guy and say, "Hey, I'm the guy in the white. Don't shoot me." You know, and I go out into the fence and I see my two officers. I'm like, "What the F are you doing out here?" They're like, "Oh, these guys are posting up. Something's going to happen." I said, "Well, what the heck are you doing out here?" Again. And they said, "Well, get out of here, Lou. You got a family." I said, "I know. That's why I'm even more mad." I said, "So stop what you're doing." I said, "You know what? All right, F it." Right. So I get on the middle of the yard and I'm like, "All right, listen up, everybody. This is how it's going to happen." And I'm like this, like I'm puckered up. I'm scared to death, but I can't let them know I'm scared to death. So I say, "Hey, listen, we're gonna shake down everybody." I said, "Since there seems to be a problem here." I said, "But if there's not a problem here, then everybody can just go where they need to go and finish out the day. You let me know." So I get to the first guy, I put him up on the fence, and I start shaking him down. Everybody walks away. And then I had one of the guys, one of the shot callers, come up to me later. He goes, "Man, you just stopped the whole damn thing that was going to happen that right out there." And I'm like, "Good." I said, "Now let's clean house and figure it the hell out, because that ain't happening. Because unfortunately, we have shot a few people from the tower and they died. So we don't want that happening on my watch." All right. So it was good from there on.
Yeah, even like, gang members and stuff, some of them don't want some of these wars to happen. They'll be praying that you
Right.
guys see it sometimes because their lives are at risk, you know.
Well, that's the thing. People don't understand that you do. They want us to do our job, so do your job. For instance, you got to fight in a cell. Trust me, the guys that are fighting want us to come in and stop it because they're worn out. They're fighting, they're going at it. And I seen one dude, because I was waiting, because those two dudes were big that were fighting in the cell because it was an overnight at the penitentiary. And the officer's like, "Open the door, open the door." I'm like, "Those dudes are huge, man. I'm not opening that door yet. They're not tired enough yet." So I'm like, "Hold on, let me get my line up, my guys lined up and get ready." I said, I see him. I see one dude look at me, and I could tell he was like, "Help." And I'm like, "I'm
Yeah,
coming. Don't worry, I'm coming." And as soon as it
the thing
started
about
getting
that,
pretty real,
that is the most terrifying thing, to get into a fight and you're in a cell with somebody, because you usually, you get in a fight, somebody's gonna break it up. If you're on the
hmm
ground and they're stomping you out, they're gonna break it up. But you're in a cell alone
hmm
with somebody else. If you get
yeah,
beat and you're on the ground, they don't have to stop.
right,
They can keep. There's been a
yeah,
lot of incidents where cellies have died. You know,
yeah. Absolutely.
did you
Absolutely.
witness any of that? Did you see did you
Yeah,
have any
a
of that
lot.
happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Just it's amazing how, stabbing, 77 times, 55 times, because like certain prisons, you can't respond until there's enough staff. So unfortunately, you're trying to get everybody together. And back then, I didn't have OC on me. We weren't allowed to carry OC or have any kind of protection. It was just keys and a radio. So we kind of had to kind of, do the best we could and clear the situation. And then when we had enough staff, then we'd jump on and try to separate, the fight going on. And unfortunately, a lot of them didn't make it. And CPR. Just like I had one guy go out, and it's in Brooklyn, and he had a heart attack, and I put him down on the stretcher, and and everybody's just looking at me, and I'm just like, "Let's go." And so I started my CPR on the gurney, and I was pretty much straddling him doing CPR out of the building. And the next day, the inmates were like, "Hey, man, CO, thank you. We really appreciate you doing everything you could for him." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Unfortunately, he had a widowmaker and there was nothing I could do, and he did pass. And I'm really sorry, you guys. But, they see you doing your job, so you're doing the right thing, and they respect that." So,
Yeah, that's the part that got me, seeing a lot of death in there. People that didn't
yeah,
make it home. And
yeah,
that's why I try to get these stories out to people, bring prison to the outside world, because a lot of rappers, a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows glorify this kind of life. And when
right.
young people go out there and commit crimes, they get sent to prison. Some prisons are worse than others. You can admit that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a classification system. We have camps where it's like community custody, and you got low FCIs, which are just basically one step up from a camp. Then you got mediums, high security, and then you got max security. So, I dealt with all of them, but there is levels of security. So that's unfortunately the
Yeah.
pens are the worst.
And I try to tell people, the higher your security, you don't want that. You want to work your way down. Like they take
Yes.
away most of your
Yes.
privileges when you go higher
hmm
up. You
Yep.
be
Yeah.
at
If
the
you can
top. You're in the cell
program.
all day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and you're fighting for your life all day, every day, and that's not where you want to be. You just try to program, do your time, and get out and get back out and try to be a positive member. Just like I said to inmates that I debrief when they come out after doing 10, 15 years, I just tell them stay away from the dudes you used to hang out with, man, because they're the ones that are causing the
yeah.
problem. I said I
That's
realize there's not going to
that's
be
the
a
only
lot
way.
out there for you, but do the best you can to try to change it around, especially if you have kids.
I'm telling you, that's the only way you can get out of the street life and stuff. You got to cut everybody off
Hmm.
that's influenced to that kind of stuff, or you leave one person, they're gonna drag you back in it.
And that's the thing,
What
it's
what
on the
ma-
streets
what?
because I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I talked to one of the Bloods one time, and I read his jacket, and I seen he had a lot of bodies on him. So I just kind of asked him. He's from California. I said, "So what's it like to kill somebody? Seriously, like, let me know." And he goes, "Well," he looks around and he's like, "Well, he goes, on the street, it's okay because you're just hanging out the window and you're shooting your gun, you're killing people, you don't really see them." He goes, "But in prison, you get that first hit, you got to stab somebody, you're up and close and you're looking him in the eye when he's dying." He goes, "And that first one really messed me up," he said. And I said, "Geez, how many have you killed?" He's like, "Well, a lot." He goes, "And it's just what I have to do here." So you got to be ready to, unfortunately, ready to kill people sometimes, because if you get told you got to do it, you got to do it. So, or
Yeah,
it's going to get done to
you,
you.
you got to. Yeah, that's the thing. I'll be trying to tell people. You don't want that kind of life. When they put a weapon in your hand and tell you to go hit that guy in the neck, and you don't do it, you might be getting hit in the neck.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah.
What mistakes do you see newer inmates make when they come in?
Just try and act tough. The biggest talkers are usually the ones that can't do it. It's the ones that come in quiet. Just listen, be quiet, do what you're supposed to do. Don't get caught up in doing the wrong thing. I like to say, if you got debts to pay, pay your debts. Try not to make debts. Just try to do your time the best you can, and try to get out. Because they're gonna have a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes you're gonna have to do what you have to do, and get yourself some more time, which is unfortunate. And I've seen it too
Yeah,
much. These young kids, they got so much to live for, and there's so much more time, and then they just get caught up in something, and then they get more time added to them.
yeah, it's like a cycle.
Hmm.
Did gangs control parts of the prisons that you were at?
Well, there's usually one gang that would control the yard, depending on how many there are, and how organized they are. Uh, like I said, the Mexican Mafia, they held most of the yards, because I had asked one of the DC blacks. I said, "Hey, there's like 500 of you, and there's like 40 Serenos. Why aren't you guys running the yard?" He goes, "Because we don't have leadership." He's like, "Those guys, they're like ants. They'll come and all kill you at once." And they kept it real with me, and I really appreciated that, because I always kind of wondered. I'm like, the numbers thing, but if you guys stick together and you're doing your thing, there's not many people that can fight that, especially if you're not really organized. I'm not sure if they're organized now or not, but at the time it was kind of every man for themselves. It was the strongest. Would pretty much run
Yeah,
it as much as he could, but you can be the biggest guy in the yard and you ain't running nothing. Because there's a lot more of them than there are you. It's like you go into prison, nobody's messing with me. I bench press 500 pounds, but you got to remember, there's people that can hold you down and do whatever they want with you, and you ain't nothing. So act right.
yeah. Um, I know when you were in there, you probably didn't eat none of the inmate food or nothing like that. But did you see how disgusting it was? Is it
I
disgusting?
ate I ate the food every single day. That's why I'm heavy, because there's so many damn carbs in it. But
Hold on,
yeah, no, I did
you ate the
actually.
CO food. The
I
CO
had
food is different
no.
from.
At the ADX, I had prison trays. They bring us extra trays, and we just grab whatever was left after we gave them to the inmates, because I guess I'm nasty like that. But I didn't. I know what was good was I could tell food service when their stuff was messed up. Like, hey, listen, I tried. It's terrible. You need to bring something else, because I had almost
I
a
bet you
riot
said
at
that
Big
every day.
Sandy. Uh, just about. But at Big Sandy, they had a lot of times where the food was messed up, and I told food service, "You will serve everybody another tray." And we had enhanced security that we implemented at Big Sandy, because it went from an open yard to enhanced security, and we got rid of the chow hall at night. So they told me one night, they said, "Hey, Guimond, you're going to do that. You're going to start that." And I'm like, "Really?" I got to tell a bunch of penitentiary inmates they can't eat, basically. But luckily, we had pre-planning, and we did. It was satellite feeding in the unit, and I went to food service and I said, "Listen, this better be the best damn chef salad you've ever served in your entire life, because I'm going to lose this institution if you don't do it." So he did. He did it right, and I went to every single unit and I said, "Hey, how was it?" And they said, "Damn, that LT, that was the best food I've ever had here." I'm like, "Good, let's keep it up, right?" And I said, "As long as I'm on, I'm going to make sure that stuff comes out good." So that aspect was pretty good, but normally you're right, crime. It's not very good.
Did inmates ever try to bribe you?
Uh,
Probably not you. Probably some of your
No, no,
officers.
because I was a little different. I was definitely, they knew not to even ask me because of me saying no, and I had a reputation, and they knew I wasn't going to give them something to get something, and it wasn't like I was super hard or anything. They didn't disrespect me by saying, "Hey, can you bring in some cigarettes?" But I know some people, they get that it starts at one cigarette. "Hey, CO, give me a cigarette," and you're like, "Oh, okay." "Hey, now give me a pack of cigarettes, or I'm going to tell them you gave me a cigarette." And it's like, "Oh shit." Now I got to give him another cigarette. Now I got to bring in, some marijuana, or he's going to tell on me, So I used to always tell my officers, "Hey, if you do something stupid like that, can you tell me you gave up a cigarette and just end it there? And don't worry, I'm not going to fire you, but I'm going to give you a good reaming first, and to let you not get, you know, unfortunately, you got people that are weak that work in a prison sometimes, and they do get compromised, and those are the numbers you hear out there of, people getting compromised. So yeah, that definitely happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's a money. It's big money in there. One cigarette
Yeah.
out
Oh
here,
yeah.
probably it go for like maybe $1. You pay like 50 cents a
Hmm.
dollar for one cigarette out here. In there, it's like $25 for one cigarette. Everything's
Absolutely.
inflated.
Yeah, everything. And a Big Sandy, the big money maker was the dip cups, and you spit into a cup, the COs, they'd spit into a cup and put it in the trash, right? Well, you'd have guys that go around collecting the trash, and they'd take the cups and they'd
Yeah,
strain it out and they'd resell it. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I ain't gonna lie. I've been guilty of that. I've dealt with that when I was in prison. There was one
Yeah.
CO spitting in. He would spit it out, and then an inmate come around, clean it up, and he'll take it and put it in the microwave or put it on the heater. Dry it
Dry it
out and
out.
sell it as tobacco. And I'm not gonna lie, I
Yeah.
bought some of it and I smoked it. Uh,
That you'd be surprised what you do in prison, right, my friend? Jeez.
yeah, you would.
But you got to do
Yeah,
what you got to do.
yeah. Um, did you ever witness an officer get caught bringing in contraband?
Uh, Unfortunately, yes. I didn't catch them, but I actually we had to pull them aside and we had to bring them under investigation and tell them to go home, And it was marijuana. Uh, a lot of times it gets through without us knowing, unfortunately. But it's like it's a game. You guys have 24 hours a day to try to beat us, and we have like 8 hours where we don't really care. So you're gonna win most of the time. So we try to do our best, and we have a
Yeah.
special investigative unit that goes around trying to find whatever they can and try to keep it down to a minimum.
What about inmates and CO relationships? Did you deal with that?
Yes, a lot as a captain, unfortunately, um, because especially the female institution, if you don't have good self esteem, you're in trouble. Because they can tell, they can sense it, because I mean they're ladies. I see khaki, that's all I see. And I'm happily married, so they kind of knew it. So I would put them in check right away, because if they come in with a shirt that's like, revealing, I'm like, get out of my office and go put something on appropriate on, and then come talk to me. And as soon as you do that, they know I'm not that guy. So then it was a respect thing, and then they wouldn't disrespect me by doing that, and they'd make sure they have a sweater on or something before they come in the office. But some people are weak, and they see the ladies and they're like, "Oh my God, she set up," kind of like the guys that go in the strip club that are in the front row, and they're like, "She loves me," and they don't understand that she sees her sentence being eliminated if she can get you to compromise and be with her, because now you just raped her, so now she can get her sentence reduced. So they don't understand that that's what they're doing. They're that stupid. They think, "Oh no, she really loves me," and I'm like, "Oh my God, you guys are killing me."
Have you ever had to deal with a female inmate getting pregnant somehow? You hear
Uh,
about it in
not
newspapers. You hear about it on the
yeah.
news.
It didn't happen to me while I was on, so I was happy about that. But we did have, unfortunately, we had staff that were being compromised by inmates, sometimes by the dozens, and um, it starts with just kind of the one guy, and then he says, "Well, hey, if you don't sleep with my boy, I'm gonna tell." So it got up to 11 at one point, where there were on and off 11 different inmates, and one of them was unfortunately our captain's girlfriend, and he would always brag about things that he would do. And sure enough, I got that inmate over, one of the inmates over at the ADX, and he goes, "Hey, you got Captain so and so on?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Ask him how my D tastes." I was like, how can you not laugh at that? I'm sorry. Uh, But I was like, wow, that was a good one. But I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But that's some of the things that happen. There's a lot more that happens. I'm trying to keep things real and letting you know exactly what happens, because
Oh
it's
yeah.
good and bad on both sides. And like I said, I've had a lot of very positive experience with inmates that I've helped out and tried to get them on the right track and to do the right thing and and right the wrongs that happen to them sometimes.
Have you seen any inmates that were in there and they weren't doing the right things? They were doing the most, and then you've seen them on the outside later on in life. Has that happened?
I haven't, the ones I've seen on the outside. Yeah, in Brooklyn, a lot. I was working as I go inside, I come out, I go on the train because back then we didn't have changing rooms. So I was in full lieutenant gear, white shirt, gray pants at the time. So I was stick out like a sore thumb going on the subway. And, sometimes I'd hear, "Hey, LT." And I'm like, "Oh, hey." I'm like, "What are you doing?" And
You
that's why
never
I
get
was
nervous?
always you know what? No, at a point, yes, but I treated them all fair, and I knew that would carry me on the outside. So of course, that feeling inside, I'm like, "Oh man, I hope this isn't going to go bad." But I remember I don't do people wrong. So if I don't do anybody wrong, I got nothing to worry about, right? So I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "I'm a lot better now that I'm not inside." I said, "Yeah, stay out of there. It's not good." So it was always a laugh. And that's the thing about Brooklyn, man, because I was the only white lieutenant at the time that was working shift. And when I started there, I thought I was going to get a lot more pushback. I really did, because I heard about the staff and they're this, they're that. And I'm telling you, man, I was family right away. I mean, that was the least racially like motivated prison, like with staff. I'm not trying to say staff are racist, but like they were like welcomed me with open arms. They were just like, and you better know your stuff. That's what they were important with. They didn't care about what color my skin was. They were like, you better know your crap, and you better take care of us if we're helping you. And I'm like, absolutely. And so that's how my whole experience went there, which was super super positive. And they were the best staff I had ever worked with. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if I asked you this, but have you ever got assaulted while working?
Uh it wasn't. Yes, it wasn't towards me. Like somebody else did something. Like for instance, we put inmates in a drunk tank and read them an incident report. That's what they get when they do something wrong, and we discipline them internally. So I had an acting lieutenant with me, and I'm doing an incident report on a use of force we had earlier. So I'm busy, and then all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, LT," and I'm like, "Oh no!" I come around the corner, and this inmate is tearing him up. And I'm like, so I had to get involved. And so I'm getting them onto the ground. And one thing I've mentioned before, I never punched an inmate ever. 25 years in the worst prisons in the United States, I never punched an inmate because it's not our job to punch inmates. It's our job to subdue them, regain control them, and it ends there. And I'm a big wrestler anyways, so I don't like to punch. But anyways, this guy was huge, and he was getting the best of him. So I go in there and I'm trying my wrestling moves, and he's whacking me in the head. And I finally get a good move, and I get some leverage, and I get him on the ground, and we get him handcuffed and restrained and everything, and we get him down. But yeah, there's been numerous times that's happened, but it's not because of me. It's because of another person disrespected a lieutenant. I mean, an inmate, and I had to get involved because obviously they're fighting now, so now I have to stop. But that's like I said, as soon as I got them down on the ground, it was done. There's no more extra shots. We do what we're supposed to do. We're done now. So
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine you would have been in that many incidents, anyways, because you said you treated people with respect. Usually, they
hmm
only go after COs that did them wrong, or
hmm
bringing bringing
uh,
their home problems to work, that kind of thing.
Oh my God, you said it exactly. The chip on their shoulder when they start the shift. One day they're Mr. Nice, next day they're what are you doing? Why? It's just consistency, just
Yeah,
always be the same. Don't bring it to work. And that's I did my 8 and hit the gate, man. That was just that's how I did things because I had a family on the outside, so I wasn't about to try to make somebody's life more miserable. And you're right. And it's usually the ones that you hear like me as an officer, I heard this other officer got assaulted, got stabbed, whatever. I'm like, well, you know, unfortunately, you're not surprised sometimes because you're like, well, I know how he talks to inmates. You know,
yeah. What story do people never believe? Do you have a story that people will never believe?
uh, yeah, it's probably the one where an inmate, there's 2 inmates in a cell, and I saw the video, so I didn't actually witness this firsthand. But unfortunately, sometimes they show you videos, and I was watching the video that happened next door. I ended up getting the inmates over at the ADX, but there were 3-man cells which stopped that after this incident, but there was 2 cousins that actually murdered their cellmate and put his guts out on the bars, and one of them bit the guy's liver. And people tend to not believe that story. They're like, that sounds like it's embellished. And I'm like, no, I saw it. It was pretty disgusting. And then I talked to the inmate after because he was complaining about his food, because the tray he got wasn't good. And I said, wait a minute, didn't you just bite a dude's liver next door? He's like, yeah, but I'm on common fare. I want my common fare tray. So I'm like, all right, I'll get you your common fare tray. Sounds good. All right.
So hold on, he cut a guy open and did that. You when you
Yeah, they
I would
both
think
did.
if you kill somebody and cut them open, like wouldn't they move you to a higher security?
Well, that's what they did. They moved him to the ADX after. But the reason they did is because one of them was getting disrespected on the yard and he was considered weak. So his cousin helped him out and they killed the dude and did something absolutely outrageous. So they thought he was crazy. That's basically what he was doing it for, unfortunately.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's good times, man. Good times.
Did any inmate generally shock you with intelligent at being smart?
Oh, yeah. The Unabomber. He was probably the smartest man I ever talked to. I talk to him all the time, and he was smarter than all our psychologists and stuff because they'd come in and want to talk to him, and he'd always be annoyed. He'd always tell me, Brian, don't let them come in here. He's like, I'm way more intelligent than them, and they want to try to pick my brain. I ain't trying. I said, well, I can't stop them from coming in, but you can refuse them if you want. Anyways, but he was just super intelligent, just always writing, and he had such a way about him. He was just basically a hermit, though. He wanted people to just leave him alone. That's why he lived in a cabin in Montana because he
Yeah.
was mad
I,
that the planes would fly over his house in Montana. So that's why he targeted the airlines. He was tired of seeing them flying over his house in Montana.
yeah, I watched a documentary on that guy. He lived in like a shack or
Yeah.
something out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. He is. He was like, I grew up in the 80s. So he was like Captain Caveman, the cartoon. He just had the beard,
Yeah.
scruffy looking, just leave me alone.
Have you ever found an inmate that self deleted?
Oh, lots of them. Yeah. Unfortunately. One didn't want to die. He was just kind of trying to get attention, and we came down the range, and then we went down the wrong range, so we got off the range, and then he went and hung himself, thinking that we were coming down the range and we're going to stop him. Well, we went off the range, and sure enough, he was trying to get off the dip bar and couldn't. And we had a whole range of inmates watching him. And I asked one of the inmates, I said, "Hey, Mid Sides, why don't you hit your duress, man?" He goes, "I wasn't under duress." Old boy was. He sure didn't want to die. He goes, but I don't get to see much in prison. That stuff was funny. I'm like, wow. But
That's
yeah.
crazy. How do officers cope with seeing so much traumatic things every day?
Yeah, you see, that's the thing. I realize that a lot of people don't have hearts for us COs because that's why it's the reason for my book. I kind of want to change the perspective of people on how they view us. But a lot of them get really messed up and they get extra hard, if you want to say it. Like at home, they'll be like, "Arr, this is what we're doing, and they don't realize what they're doing. They think that everything's fine, but it's affecting them, but they don't feel like it's affecting them. Because I've seen guys with just, we got a dude stabbing a dude and then he just started and I look over and I see him like wide-eyed, like I'm like, hey, that actually wasn't a normal thing to see. So I'm going to advise you to go get help. Go talk to somebody, please. I said, I got it. Don't worry. I said, I've seen so much of this. I don't care anymore. I said, but you're new. I said, so if this isn't the line of work for you, get out because you're going to see a lot of this. This is, almost an everyday thing. You're going to, especially in a
Yeah,
penitentiary, I had guys walk up to me full of holes all the time. And I'm like, what happened to you? He's like, I fell down the stairs. I'm like, that must be some sharp stairs. And that's what people don't realize I loved about the penitentiaries is the code. You go to the lower institutions, they don't really have that code because it's not life or death as much. But with inmates, they don't tell. They don't rat ever because well, of course there's always something to do. But most of the time it's like, yeah, I fell downstairs, go after yourself. I was like, okay, respect. Gotcha.
yeah. You don't want to be known as the guy who tells, because that will
No.
follow you anywhere you go. It'll follow you. You
Yeah, it
can't shake
doesn't end
something like
well. It
that.
doesn't end well.
That's
No,
what
you
I try to
can't.
tell people. I'm not trying to tell anybody how to live their lives. You know, if you see something and you're a civilian, of course you're gonna call police or whatever. But when you go to prison, it's a different game. You can't tell in there. I don't care
Hmm.
if you're a good person or not, because you're putting your life at danger if you do it.
Hmm.
Did you experience anxiety from the job?
Anxiety. Oh yeah, uh, that's a constant battle. The biggest time was Big Sandy. I had a lot of it going on in my head, and I was very angry. So I tell my wife, I say, hey, listen, I got some demons going on. I said I got to go revert back to my childhood, how I used to vent. So I got a double bladed axe. I went outside and I just started you know, hitting a tree like it wronged me. I was like, oh, this is done. I chopped that MFR down and I just kept hitting it and hitting it and hitting it until my hands just couldn't take it anymore. And I just about dropped. I'm sweating. And of course, unfortunately, my wife watched it and she's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm good now. I'm great. Where are the kids? you know, let's go play Nintendo or something. But it would get to you. And unfortunately, fortunately, I wasn't on the inside, man. Because you guys don't really have that. I mean, we got psychiatrists or psychologists, I'm sorry, to talk to, but it's not the same. At least I have a home to go to where I can kind of if you got a good support system, especially I did with my wife, and she would listen to me. Of course, when she read the book, she's like, I didn't know all this happened. I said, what do you mean? I'd come home and tell you all the time. And she's like, oh, I didn't pay attention. I
Yeah,
go,
see,
that's kind of good, I guess. She let me vent, but
that's the
didn't really
thing.
pay attention. So,
That's kind of like what I'd be talking about. Like say us inmates that come home from traumatic things that happen in prison, and we try to tell people about it. They hear us, but they're not listening. You know, and
hmm.
YouTube is a good place to come, and it's an outlet. To hear
Hmm.
from other people that were in your same situation. But
Hmm.
did it affect your relationship?
No, because my wife is very strong. And like she called me one time when I was at breakfast and I was just kind of staring off. And she goes, What are you thinking about right now? And I'm like, well, I said, I got a bus coming in. I said, I got 200 in shoe. I'm going to have at least 6 PCs that can't walk the yard. So I'm going to have to let some guys out. And she stops me. She goes, we're having breakfast, honey. What are you doing? I'm like, well, I can't not think about it. It's 24 hours a day. I got to think about it and what I'm going into, because I drove 72 miles one way to Big Sandy because there was nothing out there. So damn rural. It was you got haulers everywhere, so you got no like civilization. So I'd drive to work with my, five finger death punch rocking, my Metallica, and I'd be rocking to that. And then on my way home, I'd have like classical music going, just trying to relax and decompress so I could kind of go home and be like, hey, how's things going? you know?
Did you ever feel like an inmate yourself?
Oh, yeah, of course. Um, and that's, unfortunately, it's a hard business because you can't help but to empathize with inmates. And I by no means was soft at all whatsoever. Like you said, like there was guys, my fellow lieutenants that would give honey buns and to get somebody to be quiet, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not a honey bun lieutenant. I'm not a honey bun captain. You're going to do what I need you to do, and that's it. If not, I'm going to blow you up, or I'm going to spray OC, or I'm going to do it because I'm not afraid to do it. And that always got more respect than you did less, because those guys were given all kinds of cases of honey buns. Do you know what's better than a honey bun in prison in the microwave for 10 seconds, right? As you can see, I've had a few honey buns.
I'm not gonna lie, they be smacking.
Oh,
Did
but that's the thing
did
is,
any
is we're all the same.
yeah.
You
Did
say
any
that I feel like an inmate. Well, yeah, because we do the same stuff. I mean, I spend eight
yeah.
hours with inmates, man. I spend more time with inmates than I did with my wife most of the times. I'm like, damn, I got to go home.
I know there had to be times where they kept you for overtime or something, and you were like, "Man, I'm here more
Uh,
than I'm at home."
oh, absolutely. It was all the time, and the inmates would even give me shit, be like, hey, you need to go home. It's you've been here 16 hours. I'm like, I know. So I'm glad you're behaving because I don't feel like doing anything right now. I'm
What
tired, man.
what's the craziest day in prison?
uh, Craziest day in prison. I would have to say when somebody gets shot on the yard. That's that was my
Oh,
craziest day. We had two. I responded to one, and that's just crazy because not enough staff come out, right? So I'm not going to say the prison, but we all go running, and the inmates are up, and we shoot a dude, right? He's dead. Well, not enough of us come. So what happens? They get back up. That's scary. We had one guy that shot 99 rounds out of the tower and never we didn't have enough staff. The scariest part is like a standalone penitentiary. Big Sandy was a standalone penitentiary. When stuff kicked off, you didn't have help. You had your verbal judo. That's like I told you, you could be as big as a mountain, but there's a lot more of them than you. You got to use your words, man. And it's how you
yeah.
carry yourself is if they're going to listen or not. If they know you're the one that's going to zip tie them all on the ground and let other inmates get at them, they're not going to lock down. What are you, stupid? Of course they're not going to do that. But if they know they got somebody that's going to take care of them when things happen and knows what he's doing and can run a situation, firm, fair, and consistently, you don't have a problem. I have one of the biggest dudes I ever met was a big Jamaican guy, and they wanted to put him in shoe because they didn't like him. One of my staff members didn't like him, so I got to find out what's going on. And of course, I got to listen to my staff because what's happening, or I'll talk to him. So this dude, I could tell he didn't do anything wrong. So he's getting ready to go off, but he knows me. I'm like, come on, man, I'm going to go there. So I get him into special housing. I get him into the cage where they kind of go before they go into shoe. And I looked at him and I said, man, you've never given me a problem ever. I said, you're telling me you didn't do this, because everybody's like, inmates lie all the time. And no, sometimes they don't. So I talked to him. I said, listen, what happened? So he tells me, he says, you better look at them damn cameras. And usually I'm like, yeah, I ain't doing nothing for you, right? But no, this guy never did me wrong. Like I said, it was a mutual respect thing. I said, what? I'm going to take the 5 friggin' minutes it's going to take to call up somebody, say, go into that unit on that camera and see if he was going in the shower when this stuff allegedly happened. And so my guy looks it up real quick. He calls me back. He goes, hey, Lou, he was going into the shower. He didn't do anything. I said, all right, get that other officer in my office now. I looked at him, looking up at him. I'm like, hey, listen, I took the 5 minutes to check it out and you're straight up. I said, don't think I'm going to do that every time. I said, but I'm letting you out. I said, I'm putting you back on the yard. So I'll take care of the situation. And no, I will. Don't you take care of the situation. He goes, I got you, Lou. Don't worry about it. He goes, thanks for looking it up for me. It's all right, no problem, man. And I wish some of the guys could vouch for me at Big Sandy specifically because I did. I'm not a inmate lover as they call it. I'm just firm, fair, and consistent. I'm giving what
That's
they
what they
tell me,
call it.
nothing more, nothing less. Yeah, they call it inmate lover. Oh, you're an inmate lover. I'm like, no, I'm not.
What
I'm
the
about doing the
hell?
right thing. I'm like doing the right thing. I'm not.
What the
It
hell
would
is an inmate
appear.
lover?
I know. Don't take that wrong, okay? But seriously though, I was the guy that was going to do the right thing, and there was so many inmates that had problems, and I had to be on the officer's side initially, of course, because I had to find out the story, and then when I'd find out their story, like I said, I had one guy drop the N word on the range in shoe, and the whole shoe erupted, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? I'm just trying to have a nice little Saturday. It always happens on Saturdays because there's not enough staff in there. But anyway, so I go down the range and every single inmate goes, hey, he called us N, the N word, this and that, and I'm like, oh, great. So I go to the officer, I say, hey, what's going on? He goes, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, well, now that you have threats to your life and I don't feel comfortable putting you back on the range, I'm pulling you out of shoe and putting you on a unit. So he left the unit, and of course, the whole range erupted. And I'm like, I did the right thing. I said, I'm going to investigate it still. But where there's smoke, there's fire. If I got every inmate on that range saying that, I mean, come on, let's use common sense here. So I just, you do the investigations, this and that. But when you do the right thing, you get respect. And that's kind of the moral of the story.
Yeah, yeah, you're not wrong about that.
hmm
What would you tell somebody this line of work is it worth it?
Well, for me, being uneducated, high school graduate, I had really no other options. So that's why I tell people go to school or go do something you love. If you work at McDonald's shoveling French fries and if you enjoy it, you're successful. So it doesn't matter. Me, I think I was more built for this because I took this test when I was in high school and it said I was either going to be a police officer or a correctional officer. I'm like, God damn, I was both. But it was like because I'm not very, I'm dyslexic, so I got some problems with learning sometimes. So I got to do everything like 5 times before I really learn it. But the one thing I am autistic with is like learning policies and stuff, like use of force. I was him with use of force. It was 22 pages, and I knew that thing back and forth, and I could run any kind of team by the numbers every time. I could go through a whole use of force right now in my head and do it right. And I've been retired for 2 years, and I haven't done a move in 10. So it's just it's one of those things that doesn't come out and it lives in your head rent free forever.
Yeah. What would you tell a young person going to prison, like they don't have any choice to go in there for the first time? Um, what tips would you give them?
Staff or inmate?
Inmate, and you can do inmate
Okay.
and staff, yeah, after.
Well, yeah, yeah. Inmate is just basically do your time, man. Uh, do what you're told. Listen. Don't try to prove yourself. You got to pay attention. The most important thing is paying attention to what's going on. Don't get yourself in a position where you owe somebody something, because that's the biggest thing. And of course, if you got paperwork, make sure you're showing your paperwork, because the biggest thing they ask in prison is, well, let me see your paperwork, because they want to see if you're a child molester or not. And unfortunately, like in the bureau, we put inmates in special prisons that are for pedophile inmates. And unfortunately, we make better pedophiles because they talk to each other and tell each other what works and what don't work. But so keep your paperwork clean. Don't tell on people and be straight up, and your time will be a lot better. And be ready, because the one thing I asked an inmate why he puts things in his rectum all the time, and he goes, "That's just a pocket that you don't want to look at, CO." I was like, "Oh, okay." I love your honesty.
It's
I
a pocket you
appreciate
don't look
that.
at.
And you're right, because most of the times we don't want to do that. It's not like,
Yeah,
we're
you
going,
don't
hey,
want to
let
look
me take
at
a better look. It's disgusting. So they know it. And that's why they put everything there, and be ready to have to carry some stuff up there, man. Balloons are your friend, right? Especially with a shank, because that hurts when it goes up there if you don't have it wrapped in something. So
yeah,
that's good advice for somebody going into prison. Work on putting things in there because it's a pocket. But
yeah,
like as far as staff goes, a staff is just be firm, fair, and consistent, man. Uh, don't say no. when you have to, don't always say no. I'm not trying to say that. But if you tell an inmate something, you say, hey, listen, I'll get back to you. I don't know. I have an example of that. I was at Big Sandy. I had 7 different uses of force that day. I was tired. An inmate said, hey, LT, can I get this? I said, I'll get back to you. All right. So at the end of the day, I'm defeated. I get to my little Ford Focus. I hit the button, get ready to go in there to listen to some classical music. And I remember I didn't get back to that inmate. I said, son of a. So I put my stuff in my car. I walked back in. I went all the way down the range, all the way to the end. And I told him, I said, no. He goes, Lieutenant, you mean to tell me I heard you leave? You went all the way outside and came back to tell me no. I said, absolutely. I'm a man of my word, and that is very important to me. So and from that day on, he goes, you will never have a problem with me ever here. I'm like, well, thank you, but sorry it was no, but no.
Yeah, that's something right there. What's one thing
Yeah.
you want viewers to remember after watching this interview?
Just remember that, that we're all the same. We're not much different. We both have to go in to the worst place on the planet nobody else wants to go, risk their life every single day, and the good ones have to do the right thing every single day and go home to their families, no matter if it's you're an inmate or a staff member. Eventually, hopefully, most of them, except for the ones I was dealing with, didn't get to go home, but most of them are going to be your neighbors someday. So you treat them all with
Yeah,
respect, both sides, because we're both trying to do a job. You're trying to do your time. I'm trying to do my job to support my family. That was my reason for doing it. It didn't pay all that great, but it's good enough. It's not bad. I'm not complaining. But you had to do a lot to get the money, and some people didn't understand that. And I just want people to know that we're not bad. All as correctional officers, you're like, oh, COs, blah, blah. But no, we're just trying to do our job, and don't judge the many by the mistakes of a few, please, because we're all just trying to do a good job and trying to do the right thing and to support our family, man. We just want to go home, most of the time. That's the biggest thing I want to get from this book. And both sides get help, man. The things you've experienced in prison, I hope, Crime, you're going to get some help too. And just anybody that as I've seen a lot of your YouTubes, and they're awesome. And we have the same vision. I'm doing it for my staff, and you're doing it for your buddies, man. And we've all been through hell, and we're just trying to make it back, man. And it's hard because it's forever. So that's kind of what I want
yeah,
to get by with my book.
you're right about that. And yeah, if you been watching and you like his story, he wrote a book. I'm gonna have the information in the description. You got to give me a minute when we end the live. Yes. So if you want to read the book, it's gonna be in the description in a couple minutes after the live's ended. But yeah, I thank you for coming on and giving us that perspective of a correctional officer, a lieutenant. You know, we hear from the
Hmm.
inmates' point of perspective, but now we're hitting it from
Hmm.
the other side.
Yeah, I hope it helps you out, my friend. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate you, man.
And if you came in late and you missed half of the interview, you can rewatch the video afterwards and you can see the whole thing. But yeah, I thank you for coming on, and I thank everybody for taking time out your day to watch this interview. So I'm gonna go ahead and end it there. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
You had an amazing story. I ain't gonna lie, you did have an amazing story.
It was pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, it
Thanks,
was.
Mom.
Yeah, salute to everybody. Salute, man. And remember, stay free. Stay
Yeah.
out of them prisons. Stay out of them jails.